Welcome to the Manifested Podcast with Kathleen Cameron, a podcast dedicated to manifestation, law of attraction, and self-love for impact-driven entrepreneurs. My name is Tommy Collier, and I'll be your co-host, along with Kathleen Cameron, who is a rock star mom, an international best-selling author. She's an 8-figure coach, a highly sought-after speaker, teacher, trainer, and television star. Kathleen is Chief Wealth Creator, CEO, and founder of Diamond Academy, and she is the perfect guide to lead you down the path of attracting more love, more money, and more success into your life starting right now. Okay, and we're back for episode 2. Kathleen, how are you?
Hello, Tommy. Good to see you.
You too. So in the last episode, we had just talked about your first $65,000 a month. And now let's pick it up from there. So what happened next?
Oh my gosh, this is such a fun story. I'm actually getting goosebumps even thinking about what I'm about to say. I want to preface this by saying most people ask me, okay, so how much money were you making before? Like, was a $65,000 a month common for you? No. Okay. The most I'd ever made in my nursing career was probably $5,000 a month. And the most that I'd ever made in my business, my side hustle, was about $6,000 in commission a month. So $6,000 was kind of where I was set financially per month. So $65,000 was like unheard of. It was out there. It was a quantum leap.
It was like a 10x. Yeah, at least.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, and I do absolutely contribute it to the awakening that I had when I started studying Bob Proctor's material in September of 2019.
Amen.
Okay? Investing in myself, that was important too. You know, many people will say, okay, so I'll just go onto YouTube. I didn't just go onto YouTube. So I'll just say that. I actually invested in myself and my own worth, right? I saw me as a good enough asset to invest into. Anyways, but I launched my business in January. I had a $65,000 a month. Then the next month I did it again. And then the next month I did it even more. I think it was about $70,000 a month, right?
Wow.
So this was, $250,000, $250,000 in 3 months' time.
Yeah.
And what ended up happening there was I ended up receiving recognition from Bob's organization, and I received my silver pin, which was the lowest level pin. It was a certain amount of sales in your business. And when I got the silver pin, it was like, well, yeah, because I expected that. But I also was like, well, but I have a gold pin and I have a diamond pin, which are the next 2 levels. So it came really, really quick. And I didn't realize.
What do you mean? What do you mean you have those already?
Well, in my mind, I was already a diamond pin holder because the goal was diamond. The goal was never silver. Yeah. So the goal was never.
Thinking, you guys.
Yeah. Yeah. So you guys you're paying attention. I'm always thinking past whatever the next step is. I'm not just thinking the next logical step. That's, very, very important learning. But so I got my silver pin. Then my business kept growing and I got my gold pin. And then I went to Bob's house. I actually manifested going to Bob's house. So he lives only about an hour from me. And I had only met him that one time in person. I hadn't met him in person again. But he'd been hearing my name come up because of the things that had been happening. And he'd mentioned me a couple times on some calls, like, that Kathleen Cameron's, doing some big things. And I remember we were on a training one day and he actually called me up to talk to him. And I had written down that I wanted to go to Bob's house to get my pins because it was COVID. We were no longer having the in-person sessions. We weren't doing all of that recognition. I'm like, well, what's the next best thing? That I get a private invitation to his home to get my pin. Wasn't a couple days later on a live event. He literally was interviewing me and he said, Kathleen, come and get your gold and silver pin from my studio next Wednesday. And I said, yes, I will. Thank you. So everything that has come into my physical world in these stories, you will notice that they are all things that I've asked for. I've specifically written down or specifically visualized. But the next big thing in my business was when I hit the $1 million revenue mark. And I did that in 7 months. So I wanted to create a $1 million business. And I had first hoped and thought maybe it would take me a few years. But as I really started to study this and embody it and live it, I was like, what if I did it this year? And then it was like, well, what if I did it in less than a year? And then bam, I did it in 7 months, my first $1 million. The really, really fun thing about that first year in business, I did $1 million in 7 months. And then I was on a call with Bob a couple months later. And he said, okay, Kathleen, what's your goal? What are you going to do this year? If you've already done 1 million, what are you going to do this year? And like the logical Kathleen side was like, Bob, I'm going to do 2 million this year. From July till the end of the year, I'll do 2 million. And as I said it, I was like, that doesn't sound right. And I said, actually, no, Bob, I'm going to do 3 million. And he was like, okay, like I can get on board with that. So I'm going to actually do 3 times, and it happened. I ended the year at 3.3 million in my very, very first year of business.
Wow.
During COVID.
Full-on COVID.
During COVID.
Yeah.
And I did it all from my home in Guelph, Ontario. So anybody that's Canadian, Guelph, Ontario. And I did it in my office, which was half office and half dining room.
Yeah. And you were also homeschooling your girls.
Yeah. My girls were home full time. Yes. I forgot about that. So, it's just an example for you all of what's really, really possible. And at late that year, I think it might have been January 3rd, actually, of the following year is when I did receive my diamond pin. So something that I already knew. I remember when Bob gave me the gold pin, I was like, you might as well put the diamond pin on me. And he's like, you are really living what I teach. And I said, yes, I am. Like, why wouldn't I? Yeah. And so I received my diamond pin, went to his studio actually in June of that year to receive my diamond pin again. Yeah. But these are just some of the manifestations and the things. But what I want to say is you would think after a $3.3 million year, after doing all of that personal development work, after taking the courses and reinvesting, and I continue to reinvest. After that, I have always continued to reinvest in myself. I know we have a YouTube video I think it was about investing $300,000 into myself. Yeah. The video's on. But you would think that that's a lot, that going from $3,500 a month to $3.3 million in a year is like crazy, that maybe things would level out. But no, last year, 2021, we ended up doing just about 12 million in revenue because I started auto-suggesting and affirming, and I started being the version of Kathleen that was doing 1 million a month, not 1 million a year, but 1 million a month. And then that came into the physical form. And now today we're sitting here and Diamond Academy has done about 20 million since we actually started in January of 2020. I say we now because it's not just me. It was just me in January of 2020 for the first few months. But now there's people surrounding me. It's an us.
Yeah, a full corporation.
It is. It's a full corporation. And so now for us, it's like, okay, what's next on our docket? The $100 million per year vision is what's next. Yes, I know.
We are. So do you want to just because this is, kind of our first couple of episodes here, and we're both very fortunate to have some special Bob Proctor stories, and we lost him earlier this year. I just would love you to talk about a couple of the experiences that you had, like when you met him in a studio and things he said to you and things like that.
Oh my gosh, Tommy. Yeah. One of my favorite memories actually was when I got to see him in a more candid light, in a more candid way. So of course, the first time that I went to his studio, and I received my gold and silver pins. That's the first time that he'd really seen me in person. And when I walked into his studio, he had a look in his eyes and he saw me and he thought something. And, the old me is used to kind of recognizing and feeling when people think something bad about me. They think something about the way that I look or they judge me in some kind of way. So there was a part of me that was like, oh, he's judging me. And then I'm like, no, I'm not even going to think that. Why would I think that anybody's judging me? I'm just going to let it go. So I didn't think about it again, but I noticed that he had a thought, and there was a feeling with that thought. I noticed it energetically. Yeah. And I remember that day, one of the most beautiful things was I got to spend a fair bit of time with him that day. I got to sit and watch him teach one of his classes live in his studio. And I got to spend some time with him and get some photos taken. And it was really candid and beautiful. But as I left his studio, my spirit sign is a butterfly. And as I left his studio, he had these butterfly stickers all over his patio studio doors. And I looked at him and I went, Bob, that's my spirit sign. And I don't think he really knew what I was talking about, to be quite honest. I think he was kind of like, huh? And I just said, it just means I'm on the right path, Bob. And he goes, your results aren't saying that anyways. It's like you're going to leave it up to some butterfly stickers on a patio door. But it was fun, and I got to be in that beautiful energy with him. But I want to close the loop on that interaction because when I wrote my book, So Becoming the One is the story of my first quantum leap, the road to the 3.3 million. And Peggy McCall, if you don't know Peggy, you got to follow her. I'm going to be dropping so many names of people you're going to want to follow. Peggy McCall really, really supported me and guided me in the creation of that book. She kept me on track. And she said to me one day, who do you want to write the foreword? And I knew the answer, but I didn't want to say it out loud. I said, well, I know. And she said, who? And I said, Bob. She goes, okay, so have you asked him? I said, no. She's like, why not? And of course, the answer was, what if he says no?
No, yeah.
Yeah. And she's like, do you want him to say no? And I'm like, no. And she's like, Kathleen. And I said, okay. So I said, okay, what is the outcome that I want? I want him to say yes. So that means that I have to ask to then get the yes. So that's when I was like, okay, I'm going to do it. So I texted Bob and I said, Bob, I was just talking to Peggy. She's helping me with my book. We're just about finished it. You are such an integral part of my journey. Would you write the foreword? And 2 seconds later, that text message came back. Absolutely. I would love to. And so that's another manifestation of mine, was like, moving that into the physical form. But the greatest phone call that I ever received from him. So Bob used to do this thing, and I'm sure he did it to you, Tommy, where he would call you in the middle of the day, out of nowhere. You wouldn't even know that he would be calling. Bob Proctor shows up on your phone. You're in the middle of doing something. You drop it and you answer.
Yeah.
So I think I was like teaching a class, and it was like 5 minutes left of the class. I saw him calling and I said, okay, guys, Bob's calling. I gotta run. We're going to wrap this up. And he had just read my book. And he said to me, Kathleen, your book is effing amazing. I don't know if you can swear on podcasts, but he said, it's effing amazing. It's one of my top 3 books. Phenomenal. And, I just felt so much pride in that moment. He said, but I got bad news. I said, oh no, I hate the cover. He hated it. And I'm like, oh, okay. And he's like, nope, I don't like the cover. I don't think it's good. You shouldn't be on the cover of it. This book is for other people. It's not about you, Kathleen. This book is about other people. It's about other people seeing themselves in you. And I was like, oh, he's like, you shouldn't be on the cover. But he's like, I redesigned it. So he got his graphic designer to redesign me a cover. So the cover you see today was actually done by Bob and his designer. And
yes, a talented designer named Patty Knowles.
Patty Knowles. It's phenomenal. It's so beautiful. Yeah. And it was such a representation of me as well. She got me. Yeah. And, but the next thing that he said, take us back to the day that I was in his studio when I noticed the thought. He said, in the foreword, Kathleen, I talked about the day that you came to the studio, but there was something that I didn't put in the foreword that I want to tell you personally. I said, okay. He said, when you walked into my studio, I had a thought about you. And I said, I know, Bob, I felt it. He's like, yeah, I had a thought about you. And I said, okay, what was the thought? He said, this was the first time, okay, and he was 87 at the time. Would he have been, Tommy?
I think he would have been 86 at that time.
86?
No, he would have been either 86 or 87.
Yeah. He said, for the first time in my life, I saw a woman in a curvier body or a larger body. I can't remember the words he used, but he said it was the first time that he'd seen a woman in his presence that was in a bigger size body, plus size body, whatever else, that walked in with absolute confidence and no guilt or shame in their energy. And that was a pivotal moment for me, because I realized that all this work that I'd done on myself really did create a different version of me, and literally was changing the way in which people saw me and reacted to me. Because my entire life was guilt and shame, Tommy.
Yeah.
I would not go swimming with a t-shirt on. I would not wear anything but a full piece outfit wherever I went. I wouldn't even wear shorts or skirts. I wanted my legs to be covered. And I was always pulling my shirt down or my arms ahead of me, in front of me, covering. And so he really saw that the shame and the guilt around my body image was gone.
Yeah.
And he wanted to tell me. So that is honestly one of my fondest memories.
Yeah, that's such a cool story. I love that.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, when we tell this story, I think it's also important that we do mention the contrast in the story. And I think we need to talk a little bit about Bahamas.
Okay.
If you're okay with that.
Let's jump to Bahamas.
Yeah. So Bahamas was actually this year, May of this year. So we'd done the $3.3 million year. We did the $12 million year. And I went into January of this year being so optimistic and excited, and everything. I had an unstoppable attitude towards the attainment of my goals, and everything was going wonderful. And we were doing our first in-person live retreat. COVID was done. things were opening up. We chose it. We were going to do it in Bahamas. We were going to have 18 people come to the Bahamas and do this beautiful retreat and be in my energy. And a few days before the Bahamas, I ended up in the hospital with pneumonia. And I was like, what is happening here? Like, why am I sick a few days before? And I was doing a lot, but I wasn't exhausted. I wasn't stressed. I really, really pride myself on not overworking and not stressing myself out and like not exhausting myself. So I knew it wasn't that. And I ended up being released from the hospital. Well, I kind of made them release me from the hospital. I gave them so much pressure. I need to be there. I need to be there. I need to be there. I felt so much. I felt like I was letting people down. Mm-hmm. And I ended up arriving on day 3 instead of 3 or 4 days, instead of on day 1 or 2, like I was supposed to. And you, Tommy, amazingly just picked up and did the sessions and held down the fort and did all the things on top of the original things you were going to be doing. You did all that plus all the things I would be doing. And you created such a beautiful energy for those people during Bahamas when I couldn't come. So I'm so, so grateful for you for that. So when I showed up on day 3, they'd already changed. They were already different. They were already emotional, and they were having big shifts and wins. And, it was really amazing. And I ended up being there for 2 days. And the Saturday night, the third day, I believe that I was there, the second day that I was there, we did a bonfire on the beach. And I was feeling worse as the days went on. My breathing was getting harder. I needed more pain medication, wasn't able to get it. Things were looking pretty bleak. And my mom said, Kathleen, I'm taking you home. She booked a private plane. She booked a car, packed my stuff, woke me up and said, we're leaving. And we actually flew directly to Miami and went right from the airport to the emergency room. And they took me directly onto the unit, and they booked me for emergency open lung surgery. So it was supposed to be laparoscopic. They ended up having to actually open me up. Very, very intensive surgery. I had a chest tube. They actually said that my lung capacity was down to 10%. So,
oh my God.
Yeah. So I want to tell the story because much of my attention and my focus was on growing a business, and the miracles that I wanted were related to business and money and success and helping people in these things. Yeah. But this was a pivotal moment in my life where I needed to take everything that I had learned and everything that I had been teaching and apply it to my own life in saving my own life, in healing myself, and in manifesting a miraculous recovery. And so that's why, today I'm sitting here and I'm very different from the woman that I've been talking to you about today. I am a different woman now because of this event. And we will probably do a full episode talking more about it, or maybe we can turn Now or Never into a podcast episode. But there is so much learning and so much growth in that. There was so much emotion that I was holding on to that manifested physically in my lungs that I wasn't working through. And so it's so important that I want you all to know that through these stories, through these quantum leaps, the collapsing of time, the success, the money, that there is contrast and there is turbulence along the way. And being the most resilient you is absolutely the only way that you're going to continue to rise no matter what happens outside of you. So there's been other contrasts along the way, but this one has absolutely been the biggest one to experience. And one of the most important too, because if I want to fulfill this mission, Tommy, that I'm doing here with you, I need to be in a body that can make it all the way.
Amen. Yeah.
It's the most important thing.
Yeah. 100%. Okay. I want to just back up for a second here, back into 2021, because you made a pretty big decision last year that changed the trajectory a little bit of your business. You decided it's time for you to step into teaching a Kathleen Cameron-led program.
Yes, absolutely. And it's part of everyone's evolution and growth to continue to rise and to expand. I teach the art of expansion and the art of elevation to my students. And what I was noticing in myself is that I was keeping myself from fully expressing who I am and how I do things and how I teach and the uniqueness that was me by continuing to do things that I wasn't necessarily in alignment with anymore. Because for me, my journey has always started with Bob Proctor. It's always started with what he taught me. but it isn't the full story. There's lots of other things that I've learned. And I've really taken that as a foundation for the information and the knowledge that I've received, but I've created this entire framework based on many other things, many other principles. You know, I have my own way of doing things, and I really needed to step into that. And so this is where the idea of spirituality meets peak performance came in for me. This is where the idea of femininity meets the masculinity. This is where the idea of being in spirit while doing the masculine or the mechanical really come into play. And so if I ask myself, what is it that allowed me to have Kathleen Cameron results, the quantum leaping, the collapsing of time? It's my own methodology. It's my own framework. And it's my own way of conceptualizing these ideas and moving them into the physical body through embodiment. And you'll hear embodiment a lot probably as we talk. And so what makes me different is the way I see it. It's the way I embody it, and it's the way I teach it. So I really needed to step into that. And so you're a major part of that, Tommy, because I remember we had a casual conversation one day, and I think I maybe mentioned to you that I had a program called Millionaire. It literally came through me. It was written out very, very quickly, and then I filmed it myself. I had created the workbook myself, and it was in this like do-it-yourself kind of status. And I wasn't selling it yet. And I had other people selling it. I had people that wanted to be affiliates and they wanted to sell it, were out selling it, but I wasn't. And I noticed that that was something that was keeping me at a lower level of consciousness. And once I really stepped into it and I mentioned it to you, and you said, well, why don't we do that professionally in the studio? Like, why don't we film it like hair and makeup, do the whole thing? And immediately I started to feel this nervousness. And I know when I feel that nervousness, that feeling, it's kind of nervous, kind of excitement. It was like, this is what I'm supposed to do because it's getting uncomfortable here. You know, I felt
next level.
I feel a little hot. It was like, okay. And we talked about it. And we made the decision that I would actually have you do that, and went to Denver. We spent the weekend. We did some headshots. We filmed the program. It was me stepping into that next level. And I remember we actually got it done really quick. You and your team, you just created this professional course offering in the back office. And it is so, so beautiful. I'm so proud of it. And I remember I was selling like 60 programs a month on average of the previous course. And the first month we sold Millionaire, the program, we sold 100 in that first month. And that's when I really stepped into my own way of doing things. And I think those people that are meant to learn from me will be more attracted to the way I do it because they resonate with me. And that's a really beautiful thing. And it's never about making anybody wrong, but it's understanding that everybody has growth in their journey. And what you choose to do is important to you. And I kept having this vision of me having multiple courses that were, you know, that came through me in my voice and in my way. And I had been doing it. I'd been teaching in these different ways while still offering a different course. And so really stepping into that allowed me to become $100 million Kathleen that you're talking to today. On the Zoom.
I love it. And now you've had several courses come through you now. We have the Self, we have Modern Mentor. We're about to have a couple more come through. So
Wealth from Within.
That's Wealth from Within.
The money course. Yeah. We'll have to do a podcast episode on money. You know, you let us know what you guys want to hear, to be quite honest, because we want to give you value. That's what we've done with the YouTube channel. The whole YouTube channel is just things you guys have said we want to know about. We've just given it to you. We've just delivered. So we can do that exact same thing here, Tommy. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, we've got a couple of minutes left here for this episode. I think you have a special quote that you wanted to talk about before we go.
Yeah. So when I wrote my book, Becoming the One, and Bob read it for the first time, he said, you know, Kathleen, your book really, really reminds me of a book called As a Man Thinketh by James Allen. And I'd never read it. And so I went that day and I bought it, and I've read it probably 17 times since. But one of the things that probably. Yeah. Well, it's easy. It's very easy. Just like mine. That's why mine's so little, is because the books that impacted me the most in my life and in this journey have been the tiny books. So just a little background about why my books are tiny. But he talks about this in his book. And I don't think it's the exact quote. I just took and created my own quote from his words. But what James Allen said that really resonated with me is that the dreamers are the ones that change the world. And so this story, hopefully what you've just heard, is a woman who allowed herself to dream, who has made a significant impact on the world. And I'm telling you the story of the business success and the manifestations. But what's really happened here is there has been thousands of people impacted through this material, thousands of lives changed through this business. And that's what I am so proud of and so grateful that I have the opportunity and the platform to be able to continue to do this over the coming 60 years, however long I get to do this for.
Forever.
Forever.
I love it. Oh, and by the way, because we've talked about the book a couple of times, Kathleen's book, Becoming the One, we have it available for free download on our website, KathleenCameronOfficial.com. You can also get it on Amazon if you want a hard copy. It's $11.11. Because Kathleen, talk about 1111 real quick.
Oh my gosh. 1111 follows me around. 111 follows me around. 11 follows me around. It is literally spirit saying, Kathleen, you're on the right track. What you're doing is right. And we got Manifestation Day coming up at 11/11. November 11th is coming up.
Oh, yes, it is.
Stay tuned and you'll see something come from me for sure.
Good. Yeah. Yes. And then we have the Becoming the One audiobook that is just about to be released on Audible as well. So anyway, yeah. Anything else you want to say before we go today?
No.
Okay,
no, I don't think so. I think that's good for now. Yeah.
All right. Thank you for listening to episode 2.
Look at us saying the exact same thing. So thank you for listening to me, Kathleen and
Tommy.
And remember, the limit does not exist.